Welcome to You Don't Know Ball. Today we're going to be doing season previews for all teams in the AFC West. If you haven't seen, we've done all the previews for every other team outside of the AFC and NFC West. So go check those out. As always, if you don't know ball, want to know ball, be sure to subscribe, leave a like, let us know who you think is going to win the AFC West. We're going to start off here with the Denver Broncos. We're going to give our narrative, kind of discuss the upcoming season, what we think is going to happen for the Broncos, what their kind of goal is, or what our goal that we foresee for the Broncos this year. And to start off, I guess kind of looking at what they did last year, Dobbs, the narrative is how far can Sean Payton carry this team? Because without Sean Payton last year, that team is probably not winning more than 4 or 5 games. Like, the roster is so barren and bare bones that he was able to elevate that team to another level. We saw them get 70 dropped on them by the Dolphins, and I don't think people realize like how bad the team actually was and how much Sean Payton did to improve the roster or get the most out of the guys on the roster.
No, absolutely, Hunter. And that's the kind of the problem with the Broncos, which is what makes them such a hard evaluation this offseason is, right, if we were to look at this roster, and again, it sounds like I'm harping because we've talked about this before, but it's more just like it doesn't get talked about enough. Like I feel like, the NFL media as a whole and everybody, they haven't prepared Broncos fans for potentially the reality of the situation. And that's why the narrative goes back to Sean Payton, because like we say, Sean Payton is kind of like your whiteout. He erases a lot of the mistakes, He makes the paper look a lot better than it really is. But the reality of the situation is when you're looking at the depth chart is like, man, oh man, this team is, to your point, it's just bare bones right now. Right. And again, let's not sit here and act like they don't have some quality starters. They don't have good football players. They do, right? Like as far as the O-line goes, you have Garrett Bowles, you have Quinn Miners. Miners just got locked in on a long-term extension. So it's not like it's all bad, but we go across the board. I mean, the receiving core is pretty barren. Your best receiver is unfortunately very likely to get injured statistically at this point. Just he's been injured for the last few seasons. He gets injured. It's unfortunate, Cortland Sutton, but it's the case. Wide receiver 2, Craig Reynolds. I mean, we come over to the defense. Again, you basically have 2 interior backers almost playing edge rusher for you at this point. And not that they both haven't actually turned into relatively productive 3-4 edges. They actually have. That's not the problem. The problem is that the interior linebackers are a mess. The DB depth is a mess, minus Pat Surtain. And again, as I like to bring up, Pat Surtain's coming off of a pretty rough year last year. Yes, can you attribute that to the attrition of just being on the Broncos defense and all the shit that he had to deal with being thrown his way every week? Like, yeah, you probably can. But like realistically, Pat Surtain was not the best player on the Broncos defense last year. And I guess that's the last thing you want to hear if you're a Broncos fan, because you already don't really have a lot of talent on the defense. The defense is where things get really problematic. The offense is kind of just where things start. And it gets even worse when you consider that you're banking on a guy who's really, really, really dependent on having an O-line that's going to protect him very consistently, on having a good receiving core around him. And just back to the narrative here, Hunter, Sean Payton is going to have to develop him perfectly for this Broncos regime currently to kind of, in mine and your opinion, have much shot to do anything, especially being in the AFC West. It's just kind of a mess right now.
Yeah, it's going to be tough, especially when you have Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes in your division. Really, like, they are the number 1 team in the NFL. And you have the Chargers, who have Justin Herbert and Jim Harbaugh. Now, I guess the big thing is Bo Nix does have a ton of experience. So while I do think that he is going to need to be developed, as any rookie or anybody coming to the league will, the fact that he is so experienced and Sean Payton is one of the better coaches in the league, I think obviously everyone's going to have a jump, but I'm not super concerned with the transition of Bo Nix into the NFL, especially because it's not like he's coming into a team, and most rookie quarterbacks that are drafted in the top 15 are is not coming to a team that's ready to really compete now. But we saw what the Broncos were able to do last year. So if they're able to keep that record, they can at least remain quote unquote competitive, even though we know they're not going to win anything in the stacked AFC right now. So I think, I do like Cortland Sutton there, and Marvin Mims hopefully can take a step. But I think also getting Bo Nix's teammate from college, Troy Franklin, to get in there. They already have chemistry. It'll give him some confidence. Like, I think another thing too is a lot of people don't really look at Bo Nix as like a mobile quarterback, but he's somebody who can use his legs when he needs to and rush for the first down. And I think that's going to add another element to the Broncos offense that, I don't know, like Russ, he's not running around like that anymore. Like, he's older and everything like that. So I am obviously, as most people are not very, I wouldn't say a lot of people are excited for Broncos football this year. Like, let's be fair. Like, I'm interested to see what Javonte Williams can do. I'm interested to see how Bo Nix pans out. But all in all, like, this team is really not set to be exciting just due to the fact that the roster talent is pretty low, and I'd like to see what Audric Estime can do. But it's just kind of like, it feels like the first year of Sean Payton was kind of like, let's evaluate what we have here. Okay. This year is, okay, we tore down what we didn't like. We're putting in our foundation now. It's going to be a long-term plan, and we're going to see what we got this year. Because the reality is, even if the Broncos are sniffing a playoff spot, they're sniffing that wild card, that 7th seed, I don't see any way they win a playoff game this year. And that's okay. That in reality, to me, that's okay, because we know what the Broncos are. Everyone should know what the Broncos are. And if you don't, I hate to say it, but you're being a little bit delusional.
Well, yeah, and let's just say it like this. If they were to somehow go and do all that, because I was going to say, to your point, Hunter, I would not be surprised, Broncos fans, like, let me be clear, despite the roster, would not be surprised at all if you guys end up winning 8 or 9 games because of Sean Payton. And even
Right.
to your point, the wild card thing. And let's just say that they pull a New York Giants circa 2022 and they find a way to sneak one out against a much better team. We see where the Giants are at nowadays, right? Like, it doesn't, as we always say, it doesn't mean anything.
It wasn't
unless
good.
go
It was
do
actually
the whole
probably
thing.
detrimental to their future having that season.
Well, exactly. So it's like, just because you win a playoff game, again, me and you, look, so people look at it differently. Some people say that builds culture. If you didn't, to me and you, if you didn't go all the way, you were the same as the team that finished with 0 wins. It's the same. It's the exact same concept. One of them, the team with 0 wins, just gets much better capital going into the offseason to build their team.
Well, unless you traded it all the way like the
reality
Broncos have the previous seasons, but yeah.
Oh, right, exactly. And that's what makes the Broncos even more of an enigma to decipher, because they have all of the weirdest makeup you could think of for a football team. But we get to witness it, and we get to see how the Sean Payton experiment ends up working. So it's really just a big W for all NFL fans. We get to see a new experiment in action. We'll get to see what the results look like.